Did you watch the Kung Fu episodes at the time before you submitted your story?
Yes, to try and figure out what David Carradine was into as a character.
They were all trying to figure out what David Carradine was into. What is it about Westerns you think that makes them work?
Well, it's a period of our history that was so exciting, and the country was expanding, and people were finding new ways to live new lives. Practically any Western is an investigation into those areas, I think. It's an adventure, it's something new in your life, it's going west and founding a ranch or a farm or maybe a store in town, but something that you didn't do before.
The era that you were writing Westerns, mostly they were all written by men. I know Katherine Hite wrote a lot of the Gunsmoke episodes, and Gerry did some Bonanzas.
Yes.
Was there ever any problem with the people hiring you to write a Western?
Margaret Armen was another writer of Westerns, detective shows, cops, whatever was on the air, she was writing for it. She was one of my heroes. I didn't have any problems because the first few stories I sold and teleplays I sold were to the man I worked for. So he knew I could deliver, and I knew the show backwards and forwards. When you go out into something else, a show that you've not worked on, you may have seen, but it's a little harder because you have to find a story they didn't do yet. Some aspect of the character that they haven't exploited yet or shown yet, and that will usually catch them. The producer's attention is like, oh, we never thought of that, go do it. And I worked with very good producers who were not bothered by the fact that when I walked through the door I was a woman, and because I had credits, they knew I could write, tell me your story. If I pitched one they liked, they bought it. So I was lucky. I connected with the right people, and they were all good producers.
Well, there was Sam Peeples, who obviously you hit it off with because of Tall Man and Lancer. He was the creator of those shows.
Also Frontier Circus, where I did a story. But I was production secretary on the show.
Lancer.
Yes. Yes.
Andrew Duggan, just James Stacy was in that, Wayne Maunder.
Yes.
How were you involved in Lancer?
I was free of Star Trek at that point, so I went in and pitched a story. Actually, I had been able to look at the pilot and read some scripts, etc. And Sam said, do you want to do one? And I said, yes. And so I just did one. But it was really fun to do because I wasn't associated with the show. I just had to come in cold. It wasn't on the air yet, so you had to go by what the scripts were and the pilot's film. And you just had to pick it up as you went along. But there were some good actors there.
But also, he was one of the writers on Star Trek, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He wrote the pilot that worked. Seriously.
Where no man has gone before.
Where no man has gone before. And he wrote those opening words as part of his script. And Roddenberry picked up on it and said, this is what Bill Shatner has to say. That opening narration, which is now famous, everybody can quote it, but it was out of Sam Peeples' pen.
When it originated, was sold as it's a wagon train out in outer space.
Wagon train to the stars.
So were you given any guidance in how to do the episodes that you wrote? Because you wrote so many.
Well, I was Gene Roddenberry's secretary when he started writing the pilot, when he was pitching it as a potential series. And it took us 2 years ultimately to get a pilot on and the series started. The first year, 1964, he did the first pilot, and then they said, no, it's too talky, and and then Gene brought in Sam Peeples to do the second pilot, which was the one that sold. I also wrote a Here Come the Brides, which was fun because it was inspired by a Laurel and Hardy comedy. That before they were Laurel and Hardy, it was called Putting Pants on Philip. And it was where Stan Laurel, who's a Scotsman, was having to be fitted for pants. And of course I was laughing my head off, but then I thought, wait a minute. Bolt is kind of a Scottish sort of name, And I brought the head of their clan, who also happened to be their great uncle, to the Bolts in Washington, and he complicates their lives because he expects to be obeyed in everything. He's the head of the clan, isn't he? Except that everybody in the clan back in Scotland is dead. So they're the only ones. And I was having fun with it. And with Denver Pyle did a great job. He was wonderful.
Denver could do it all.
Yep.
He directed a lot too. But the Putting Pants on Phillips, that's silent Laurel and Hardy, one of their best. Leo McCarey directed that too.
Yes.
Two-reeler.
But it was fun. It was fall down laughing fun. And that kind of inspired me to think about, well, what would a Scot do if he was in the Old West and he had some power over this family? What would he do? And how did he mess it up? Which was the story, and it was fun.
Well, it's nice to write a comedy for a change, too.
It was a semi-comedy. It wasn't really, but yeah.
Bonanza series was huge at the time, and you wrote an episode of that with
two.
David Canary, I think.
Yes, I think that's right, yeah.
One of those. What was that like? Because David Dortort had been going on, the characters were in place. How did you come up with something different for an episode when there's already been 200 or 300 of them produced?
Well, again, you walk in with the kind of story they haven't done yet. It's a Western, it's an action piece, or has action in it at least. There's always some kind of drama in it, some kind of real problem to be solved, and you pitch it. I think I went in twice before I connected, but I did do 2 Bonanzas, which were nice. The second one, The Stalker, really kind of followed David Canary a lot more than the regular brothers, but it was a good show, and they liked it. I never got a chance to go back because I was on to other shows, but it was a good experience working for them. And they were right on the Paramount lot, so I had some access there, and I could go down on the local stages when they weren't shooting up around Lake Tahoe. There's
a show that I loved in the early 70s. It was about a peaceful man who could take care of himself, and then always there was a tension there as you knew he was going to just kick butt. And it was David Carradine and Kung Fu. You wrote one of those with the strangest guest cast.
Well, I just wrote the story for that one.
Oh, Jose Feliciano.
Yes.
And Cannonball Adderley.
Yes. Yeah.
That's like when Andy Finnerty put Soupy Sales on The Rebel.
Yes. Yes.
Which was very strange, I remember. Just stunt casting, I guess. But
I guess so, yeah.
Did you watch the Kung Fu episodes at the time before you submitted your story? Yes,
to try and figure out what David Carradine was into as a character, obviously.
They were all trying to figure out what David Carradine was into.
Well, the story worked at least, and I didn't get a chance to do the teleplay, but yeah, it's always a good credit.
Well, you've written so many Westerns. Do you prefer Westerns or comedies or science fiction?
I don't do comedies. I watch comedies, but I don't write comedies. Westerns are fun. I love science fiction. I did primarily Star Trek, Star Trek Next Gen, DS9, and Babylon 5.
With Bruce Boxleitner, right there.
Yes.
Okay.
And that was fun to do too. Bruce came in on the second show I did, as I recall, because the other gentleman said goodbye to.
They needed a bigger star.
Oh, okay. but they were, thank you. But they were fun to write too, because I was working with J. Michael Straczynski and Harlan Ellison, and it was good people to work with whom I knew from before, so we got along very well, and it was easy to put those stories on the page. In a little way, they were Westerns. You can do a whole lot in outer space and on a space station. There are some things you can do and some things you can't. You can't take a walk outside, for instance, unless you're in a big suit. But they were fun to do, and sometimes they got a little Westerny.
Is there any genre that you feel like you should have done but never had the opportunity?
Not really. I worked on shows that I liked. I did crime shows like Streets of San Francisco and a whole bunch of others. And I've enjoyed myself.
Dorothy, it's been a joy. talking to you
Thank
and showing a side of you that so many people don't know, and a side that we love, which is the Western.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, I'm Rob Word. I hope you enjoyed A Word on Westerns. It's an interview series we do. We post a new one every single week. If you missed any, just sign up for this little baby right here.